Welcome to this deep dive into betaine, a compound you often see on pre-workout labels. We're going to explore whether it's genuinely helping your performance or if it's just a decorative ingredient to make formulas look more scientific. As part of our channel's ongoing focus on supplements and practical health strategies, we'll unpack the science behind this ingredient in an engaging, easy to understand way. By the end, you'll know what betaine is, what it does in the body, and how to read pre-workout labels with a more critical eye. Have you ever scanned a supplement label and wondered whether every ingredient is pulling its weight? Betaine is a prime example of a compound surrounded by bold marketing statements yet often underdosed in products. This presentation asks a simple question: does betaine in your pre-workout actually make a difference, or is it simply there to make the ingredient list appear more impressive? We'll tackle this by comparing what brands claim to what the research actually shows. Supplement brands love to tell you that their formulas are clinically inspired, but that doesn't always mean they provide clinically effective doses. With betaine, marketing often emphasizes strength, power, and hydration benefits, yet the amounts used may be far below what studies have tested. It's important to remember that your supplement budget should go toward ingredients and dosages that will realistically impact your training, not just create a long ingredient list. Throughout this video, we'll differentiate between filler doses that just make labels look appealing and functional doses that have evidence behind them. Betaine, scientifically known as trimethylglycine, occurs naturally in many foods. Beets, spinach, wheat bran, wheat germ, and seafood are all good sources. The compound is produced in your body from choline metabolism and plays several important roles. Typical diets supply about 1/10 to 4/10 of a gram per day of betaine, with high fiber diets occasionally reaching up to around 2.5 grams. Most pre-workout products use betaine anhydrous powder to deliver gram-level doses, well beyond what food supplies. Later slides will explore why dose matters so much, but for now, just know that dietary intake is usually much lower than the amount studied for performance. Understanding why betaine might be useful requires a quick look at its biology. First, betaine acts as an osmolyte, which means it helps your cells maintain their volume and hydration under stress. This osmoprotective role could support muscle cells during hard training. Second, it's one of the body's key methyl donors, providing methyl groups that convert homocysteine back to methionine. This reaction is crucial because methionine supports the synthesis of creatine and carnitine, compounds involved in muscle energy and fat transport. Some research also suggests that betaine may act as a protein chaperone, helping proteins maintain their shape under stress. Lastly, it may support nervous system function by boosting choline and acetylcholine production. These mechanisms provide the biological rationale for why betaine is sometimes marketed for performance, although these roles don't automatically translate into large improvements in strength or power. From a marketing perspective, betaine ticks several boxes. It's relatively inexpensive and easy to add to a product, which makes it appealing as a filler ingredient. Companies often highlight its roles in cell hydration and methyl donation to suggest better muscular endurance or power. Phrases like osmolyte for hydration or supports creatine synthesis sound impressive, and when doses are small, the ingredient can still be listed on the label. Some brands also hint at clinical relevance by using wording similar to scientific studies without necessarily matching the tested dosages. As consumers, we need to remember that simply seeing betaine on a label doesn't guarantee it's been included at levels high enough to have an effect. When you dig into marketing claims, two key mechanisms are usually cited. First, betaine's ability to increase cell hydration means it can buffer against osmotic stress, potentially helping muscle cells maintain function during intense training. Second, by donating methyl groups, betaine supports the synthesis of creatine and carnitine. Since creatine is well known to enhance high-intensity performance and carnitine helps transport fatty acids for energy, there's a reasonable rationale for including betaine. However, these mechanisms don't guarantee large performance gains. Creatine itself is more direct and well studied. Betaine's indirect support may provide modest benefits at best. We'll see how these mechanisms have translated into mixed results in human trials. Across most sports nutrition studies, effective dosing falls within a narrow range. Researchers typically administer about 2 to 2.5 grams of betaine per day, often split into 2 servings of roughly 1.25 grams. These protocols usually last between 2 and 6 weeks, with subjects consuming betaine every day, not just on training days. It's worth emphasizing that consistent intake is critical. You can't expect a single pre-workout serving to deliver the same cumulative effect as weeks of supplementation. As we go forward, we'll compare these research protocols to what typical pre-workouts provide. If a label doesn't disclose the amount of betaine or list it in a proprietary blend, it's reasonable to assume the dose may fall below this evidence-based range. So what do those doses actually do? Positive findings generally cluster around the 2 to 2.5 gram range. Some studies have reported increases in work volume, improvements in lean mass, and modest gains in power at this dose. When researchers have tried higher amounts, 4 grams or more, the benefits haven't consistently improved and safety concerns start to emerge. For example, some trials using 6 grams per day found that this high dose increased LDL cholesterol and raised triglycerols. Even lower doses slightly increase LDL, though not always significantly. These data suggest there's a sweet spot where benefits, if any, appear, and that more isn't better. Let's summarize key findings from several trials. In one study where participants took 2.5 grams of betaine daily for 2 weeks, researchers observed more repetitions during squat endurance tests and a higher proportion of reps performed at or above 90% of peak power compared with placebo. Another 2-week trial found that betaine improved bench press throw power, increased isometric bench press force, and boosted vertical jump and isometric squat force. When dosing continued for 6 weeks, the results shifted toward body composition. Participants gained lean mass, reduced fat mass, and increased bench press work capacity, though 1 repetition maximums did not significantly change. These studies highlight that betaine's potential benefits vary by protocol, and that improvements in work volume and muscle endurance may be more consistent than changes in maximum strength. Before we get carried away, it's important to recognize the inconsistencies. Several 2-week trials reported no change in total bench press repetitions or power compared to placebo, even at the same 2.5 gram dose used in positive studies. The 14-day study that found improvements in bench press throw power stands out because other trials have not replicated those gains. Reviews of the literature consistently conclude that betaine's ergogenic effects are inconsistent, and that more research is needed to determine who, if anyone, benefits reliably. In other words, the existing evidence does not support broad claims that betaine will boost everyone's strength or endurance. If we rank popular pre-workout ingredients by the strength of evidence, betaine usually sits below creatine, caffeine, and citrulline. Creatine has decades of solid research supporting its ability to increase strength, power, and muscle mass. Caffeine reliably improves alertness and endurance when used at appropriate doses. Citrulline malate has growing evidence for enhancing blood flow and reducing fatigue. Betaine's evidence is mixed and largely preliminary, so it should be considered a secondary ingredient, rather than a cornerstone of your formula. That doesn't mean it's useless. It just means you shouldn't prioritize it over ingredients with more robust support. In a well-rounded pre-workout formula, your core ingredients should address energy, focus, and performance. Creatine supports high-intensity strength and power output. Caffeine boosts alertness and reduces perceived effort. Citrulline increases nitric oxide production, which can enhance blood flow and muscular endurance. Betaine may complement these players, but only as an optional add-on. If your budget or stomach space is limited, it makes sense to prioritize creatine, caffeine, and citrulline before considering betaine. When you do include it, make sure the dose meets the evidence-based range and that other ingredients are not compromised. One challenge in evaluating betaine is the way many companies list it on labels. United States regulations under the Dietary Supplement Health Education Act allow manufacturers to group ingredients into a proprietary blend, where they must disclose only the total weight of the blend and the names of the ingredients, not the precise amount of each component. Items within the blend are listed by weight, but even that order can be misleading because a tiny amount of betaine could appear behind a heavier filler. Without transparent dosing, you cannot verify whether a product contains the 2 to 2.5 grams shown in research. As consumers, we should favor products that list betaine as its own line item with an explicit amount. To make the most of your supplement budget, develop a quick checklist for evaluating labels. Start by looking for betaine on the supplement facts panel and avoid formulas that hide it inside a proprietary blend. Next, check the dose. Products providing at least 2 grams of betaine per serving are more likely to mirror the amounts used in research. Finally, consider the order of ingredients in any blend. If betaine appears near the end of a long list, it's probably present in a very small amount. This simple framework helps you filter out underdosed formulas before you spend money on them. A few more points make label reading even more effective. Be wary of fancy names like Power Matrix or Hydra Complex, which often obscure low dosages. Underdosing usually affects multiple ingredients, so if creatine or citrulline is listed in tiny amounts, betaine is likely underdosed as well. Also, pay attention to the number of ingredients. Sometimes companies sprinkle small amounts of many compounds to create the illusion of a comprehensive formula. It's better to choose a product with fewer ingredients at effective doses than one with a long list of underdosed additives. Remember, the goal is substance over fluff. Betaine can have a place in your routine if certain conditions are met. First, the product should provide at least 2 grams per serving, and the label should be clear about that. Research indicates that daily doses in this range, taken consistently for 2 to 6 weeks, are associated with improvements in lean mass, work volume, and some power measures. Second, betaine works best when you're following a solid training and nutrition plan. Its potential benefits are marginal compared to the gains you'll get from progressive overload, sufficient protein, quality sleep, and proper hydration. Finally, don't expect immediate effects from a single serving. If betaine helps you, the effects will accumulate over weeks of consistent use. On the flip side, betaine is unlikely to deliver if the dose is too low or hidden in a proprietary blend. Products promising creatine-like effects or massive pump solely from betaine are overstating the science. High doses aren't the answer either. Trials using 4 grams or more per day have not shown extra benefits and have raised concerns about changes in cholesterol and triglycerides. More is not better. Ultimately, if a supplement is underdosed or makes exaggerated claims, it's safer to skip it and focus on proven ingredients. While betaine appears safe at research doses, there are some trade-offs to consider. A meta-analysis of homocysteine lowering nutrients found that 6 grams per day of betaine raised LDL cholesterol and increased triglycerols in healthy adults. Even lower doses produced modest LDL increases, though these were not always significant. High doses may also cause gastrointestinal discomfort. Medical sources note that betaine can cause nausea, stomach upset, diarrhea, and even body odor. Proprietary blends complicate dosing, so people stacking multiple supplements might unintentionally consume higher amounts. If you have cholesterol concerns or GI issues, consult a healthcare professional before adding betaine, and always monitor your response. Given the mixed evidence, what's the best approach? Start by prioritizing ingredients with strong support like creatine, caffeine, and citrulline for improving strength, focus, and pump. If you decide to include betaine, ensure the product provides at least 2 to 2.5 grams per serving, and use it consistently for 2 to 6 weeks before judging its effects. Always scrutinize labels for transparent dosing and avoid proprietary blends that hide ingredient amounts. Finally, pay attention to your own body. Track changes in strength, volume, lean mass, lipid levels, and gastrointestinal comfort. Adjust or discontinue use based on your personal response, and consider consulting a healthcare professional, especially if you have health conditions or take medications. So is betaine filler or function? At doses around 2 to 2.5 grams per day, betaine may support lean mass gains, increases in work volume, and slight improvements in certain power markers. It's not a miracle ingredient though. The evidence is mixed, and benefits are smaller and less consistent than what you'd see from creatine or citrulline. Products that underdose betaine or hide it in proprietary blends offer little more than label decoration. The bottom line is to seek transparent dosing and treat betaine as an optional add-on rather than a cornerstone of your regimen. To wrap up, remember these key points. Betaine is a naturally occurring compound that acts as both an osmolyte and a methyl donor. Research doses of about 2 to 2.5 grams per day show mixed benefits, with possible improvements in lean mass and work volume. High doses beyond 4 grams per day do not provide extra performance benefits and may raise LDL cholesterol. Proprietary blends often hide the actual amount of betaine, so always look for transparent labels. Invest first in proven ingredients like creatine, caffeine, and citrulline. Use betaine as an optional add-on if you're curious and can verify the dose. Above all, make informed choices and talk with a qualified healthcare professional before starting any supplement, especially if you have existing health conditions or take medications.